Well, joining me now is Ari Fleischer, former press secretary for President George W. Bush, also CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Paul Begala. He co-chairs a pro-Hillary Clinton super PAC. Paul, Cheney there laying the blame for the spread of ISIS solely at President Obama's feet.
Yeah, amazing. What a valuable piece of videotape. That is a portrait of a political sociopath.
For Dick Cheney, political sociopath?
Political sociopath, yes. I actually went and looked up on the Mayo Clinic website the definition of that disorder, and it fits Mr. Cheney to a T. Inability to ever express remorse, to admit error, manipulative, dishonest. This point about ISIS, for example. ISIS exists because of the invasion of Iraq. Iran is stronger because of the invasion of Iraq. We invaded Iraq because Mr. Cheney twisted intelligence to try to persuade the country to invade a country that was no threat to America. And now he sits there and actually has the gall to try to blame President Obama for trying to manage the damage.
Ari, I mean, is it irresponsible of the former vice president not to accept any responsibility, as Paul says?
Well, the question put to him was about ISIS. And I think it's irrefutable that the fact that ISIS exists is created because of the vacuums that President Obama has created. The question was not, do you have any apologies that you would like to make over the 8 years in office? Very different issue, and who knows what Dick Cheney would have said to that.
But Ari, just factually speaking, it does seem like Dick Cheney is kind of washing his hands of some responsibility. I mean, first of all, he talks about the surge. He doesn't talk anything about what came prior to the surge, which were clearly a lot of missteps that made the surge essential. And also the surge was really designed to create the possibility for some sort of political solution in Iraq with leaders picked by your former boss's administration, and they failed to do that. And there was an agreement that President Bush signed about the status of forces that you can argue whether or not President Obama worked hard enough to keep U.S. forces there to kind of refashion the agreement. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, can he really just lay it all on President Obama?
Well, first of all, we don't know what questions were asked in that snippet you showed about the 2003 decision. And people can argue about that. I think what you can't argue about that Iraq in 2007 and 2008 was a stable country. That is the country that President Obama inherited.
Well, I think you can in terms of the military situation was far better. The surge obviously was something, but
the political situation was an improving situation.
Well, but Nouri al-Maliki, though, clearly
it was an improving situation for a country that had Saddam Hussein at the helm and had never known any type of representative government, and it was working its way forward, trying to figure it out. Maliki was not the best or strongest leader, but the point is you needed America's guiding hand to pull Iraq through it. Barack Obama did not have any interest in extending America's guiding hand. He wanted to end it and get out of there. And that's one of the reasons that the vacuum was formed. That's one of the reasons that ISIS was able to take over so much of Iraq. And that's why we have so much turmoil there today. And that's why Iran is so influential in Iraq today. This is all the results of the vacuums that gets formed when America does not lead.
Paul, it's also interesting, Dick Cheney clearly doesn't seem to give any credit to President Obama for the killing of Osama bin Laden. He credits the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques, which critics would call, in some cases, torture techniques.
Right, and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence issued, at least what I read was declassified, a voluminous report on this and on torture, and said it did not help. I will say, far be it for me to defend Dick Cheney, in other interviews he has said that it was good that President Obama killed bin Laden. And so at least, but in this one he didn't. And again, it goes to this, I'm telling you, like on this question of Iran. I'm old enough to remember when Bill Clinton, my old boss, was trying to pass tough sanctions on Iran in the 1990s. And we had strong Republican support for that. I'm sure Fleischer supported it. The chief opponent of our sanctions against Iran was Dick Cheney, then the CEO of Halliburton. And in that interview, he's sitting in that beautiful mansion. He's got all that money. That money came from Halliburton. Halliburton was trading with the enemy in Iran. We passed the sanctions despite Cheney's opposition. But then Cheney, as head of Halliburton, got around those sanctions. He traded with the enemies. He enriched the terrorist regime in Tehran. He enriched himself. And now he's the one saying that President Barack Obama is not tough enough on Iran. It boggles the mind for somebody with that kind of record to now be lecturing President Obama. It's amazing to me.
Or should President Obama get some credit on the killing of bin Laden?
Well, of course he should. He's the one who authorized the mission, and the SEALs carried it out, and the president deserves the credit for authorizing it. Joe Biden opposed it. But, you know, I don't know what relevance this has to the future. If this is what you want to shape the next election on, is the debate about the killing of bin Laden, good luck. That's something that Barack Obama can be and should be. All Americans should be proud of. And the enhanced interrogation techniques absolutely played a role in the detection of the courier who led us to bin Laden. All of that came together. And the other thing that helped the mission be successful was the military buildup that George Bush put in office. And I've credited President Obama for the continued drone strikes, for indefinite detention, warrantless wiretaps. He has continued much of the infrastructure that he criticized as unconstitutional. He tweaked little bits of it and continued most of it in place. And that's to his credit, but he shouldn't have been the hypocrite criticizing George Bush for violating the Constitution when those are the very things that have kept us free. And I'm glad that President Obama has continued them.
Paul, appreciate you being with us. Ari Fleischer as well. Thank you, gentlemen.